morning, Meb. Can you see us?
Can. Hola, hola, hola.
Cool. So, first of all, thank you very much. That was a very insightful presentation. Your exploration of the idea of bringing human touch back to Martech was quite fascinating. So, thank you for that. Um, we are also privileged to have Prateek here. I think you haven't met, have you? No, you haven't.
Connected on the email,
Okay,
I
cool,
guess.
cool,
I'm
cool.
Hi.
Okay, so first of all, then I would like to start with you, Prateek.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe start with some opening comments about this whole aspect of ethical design, etc., especially in context of your organization and the work that you do.
Yeah, I think it's a very important factor, and especially in a sensitive sector like ours, which is healthcare. Uh, so you'll continue getting some business via offer-led or discount-led communications, promotions, and sales, which is part and parcel of the business. Uh, but Martech at Apollo 24/7 is deeply invested in computation of over 1 million records, health records, on a daily basis. Uh, Captured across multiple touch points within the Apollo ecosystem, pan-India. And these health records are pretty sensitive in nature. So this could range from, say, a medicine bill generated at an offline pharmacy store, to a discharge summary from the hospital, uh, to a doctor prescription. So there could be multiple touch points through which all of these data points are being uh, provided by the users or captured through multiple touch points. On top of which, we have created our own data science models and in-house AI capabilities, which draws inferences and triggers from all these data points to basically send the signals to the marketing and CRM teams to leverage upon. And the way we see personalization plays a big role specific to our kind of customer base is to basically identify where they are in their healthcare consumer journey, uh, and bring that correlation context while we are communicating and engaging as a brand altogether with our customers. That's quintessential and is center to our Martech architecture and ideology in general.
I think the fact that you work in healthcare has a lot of significance in ethics and fairness and things like that. So we'll come back and touch upon some of those things. Good reminder, I think. Okay. So, Meb, next question, next topic is for you. So you talked about accountability, right? Now, there was a Stack Overflow survey in which nearly 50% of the surveyed developers believed that the humans creating AI should be responsible for considering the ramifications of that technology, not their bosses, not their reporters, but the person who's actually creating it, right? This means that you need to ensure all your developers understand their responsibility and are held accountable for that. Now, it's easier said than done, right? So can you elaborate a bit on how do you ensure that happens? Can you put some practices in place, etc.? Talk to us a bit about that.
Yes, a lot of work that we're seeing, and this is emerging a lot, especially global organizations that are leaning into AI, is putting data ethics committees together. And the ethics committees, some are even bringing data ethicists into the organization, making this one step further with high privacy council, these ethics committees. So that's a big thing, especially in the United States, especially. But the committee is not just to be the overlord, it's to create guidelines that get distributed across the organization. So that becomes part of the training of the community. And that's very important because you go into understanding the values. One of the values is we care about the product we produce, and we need to ensure that part of the training requirements that are embedded in the day-to-day work programmers are being seen and shown. So that's how this really brought into the field with this broader arm ethic that is creating guidelines, reducing it from training all the way to the requirements that programmers have to think about when building new products.
Okay.
Now, and if you add, for you, for folks that are in the room and they're not in healthcare, not developers, you say, great, so I don't got to think about it. But the topic of data ethics is critical. If you're managing data, if you're thinking about data strategies, to managing Martech, it's still part of the discussion. So what we've done in SSU.com is that we deployed a tool that allows everybody in the organization, in a very democratic way, ask themselves key questions that bring forth potential vulnerability. And that's something that I encourage folks in the room to start thinking about. Even if you're not the programming side, start thinking about the core questions that you should be asking, that your employees should be asking to partners, to those that are bringing into the work.
Thank you, Meb, for that perspective. Is her audio clear to everyone? Can we do something about this, please? Meb, are you able to hear us okay?
I can hear you guys. There's a bit of a, as long as you guys can hear me, we're good.
Okay, okay. So Pratik, next question is for you then. While we were chatting before this session, right, you were mentioning team structure and how multiple roles such as maker, checker, approver, etc. can help with accountability. Can you talk a bit about that?
See, we believe that accountability has to be shared. In today's world, it's hygiene to create standard SOPs, and you will have roles management in terms of someone will create, someone will probably check it, and then someone will finally publish or approve it. However, the bug does not stop there. In our kind of ecosystem, Martech sits at the center as a central facet to multiple teams. The execution would be done by a CRM team, wherein the primary goal would be the time to market. Typical trade-off with the brand in this case would be to ensure that the tonality is maintained in communication. However, even data lake, engineering and data science teams are a big part to it. Because like I mentioned, when you compute the health records and you try to stitch a 360-degree view of a customer in a healthcare ecosystem, you need to be very sure about the precision and accuracy with which you are recommending something, because here the recommendation pertains to either a preventive test or a doctor's specialty to consult, or probably something that you can take as an OTC to cure the initial symptoms. So we work in a cross-functional work group, which basically passes through all these patients, and while the central ownership does lie with the Martech team, the accountability is deeply segregated between all these pillars, and everyone contributes towards it.
So would you say that governance plays a major part when you're working with all these cross-functional teams?
Absolutely, and governance is, again, like I mentioned, so governance would also pertain to each of the verticals. Say for engineering, the governance might start with deploying the kind of restrictions or the kind of guidelines that we have from a legal perspective, ensuring no data leakage, and then from the CRM side, not to compromise on the quality versus quantity trade-off when it comes to brand tonality and time to market. So there cannot be a central CISO or someone who, as an individual, governs the entire ecosystem. Each and every individual contributes towards it.
Okay, thanks for that. Meb, you spoke about fairness, and you mentioned the idea of biases there, right? And biases, as we know, is human nature, right? So there is a tendency to embed our biases in the AI systems we create, right? But of course, this is not a one-time effort, right? Because your data keeps changing, your use cases keep changing. So how do you ensure that you keep auditing these biases on a continuous basis and keep mitigating against them creeping in? So on an ongoing basis, how do you address that?
That's an amazing question, because it's a question you can put guardrails And the technique that I brought up in my presentation, the IAB fairness 360 does have some guardrails, but you can't just automate that. And I'll give you an example. In the United States, there was a algorithm that was really centered around the correction facility. And no matter what data, it just went against African. There were more likely to that, to come up as false positive from the perspective. And the intention was to be with the algorithm was really to combat biases. They felt, well, they use an algorithm, the algorithm would be less biased than a person. But going back to the data that is being supplied, if the values are starting off from a place of bias, that's when it becomes very difficult. So one of the things it's important to us to recognize, acknowledge, is where is the data, how is the data collected, where is it coming from, and start asking when you get outputs, what are the different things that you can start articulating responses and asking you the question sense. Third way we can come back, guys, data acquisition modeling, I would say, is who are designing models. Because that when you have that diversification of people building models in different regions of life, it can give different perspectives to that base. If I am a Latino woman, I'm bringing the scope of who I am, my history. So when I look at the data, and then when I look at the models, I'm bringing how does that make sense in my experience? Then maybe one of my counterparts just doesn't have that. They don't have that experience. So having diversification of builders is extremely important as well. So in summary, it's really three, is understanding the data collection mechanism, what data you have, where is it coming from, how is it collected, where you're not collecting. So like those are the questions we need to ask. Second is around having, after the model's out and before releasing, start running scenarios so you can understand what does this mean in the context of the world. And third, lastly, ensuring that there was diversification in the people who are building these models.
Okay. So next I'll come to you, Pratik. This is about privacy and data protection, etc. Right? So a recent EU survey found out that 71% of EU citizens find it unacceptable for companies to share information about them without their consent. Right? In India also we now have a DPA, right? So the question then is that, and yours is a very sensitive space, healthcare information, etc. How do you ensure an optimum user experience with minimum user data by collecting as less as possible?
See, the best part is to not to ask the user to provide the data, but to identify the triggers through which you can deduce and draw inferences. So like I mentioned before, while we are computing a lot of sensitive and confidential data, which could pertain to, say, a test report parameter changing from one time to the other, a doctor prescription. So data of that nature, while the compute will be done at the back end, at the nth node in terms of our architecture, we've created data rooms and vaults through which, firstly, only the inferences and the triggers and signals needs to be passed on to the next node. If it so requires that a peculiar data point also needs to be transmitted, it has to be encrypted, such that the immediate next node, only the intended recipient could decrypt and further utilize it for consumption. And at the nth, at the first level, when it comes to, say, the marketing automation side of things, those inferences, when are being utilized by the teams, we take specific care that our communication should not come across as an intrusion to the consumer journey, but Apollo as a brand should be empathetic in the tonality And when we reach out to the consumer, we want to give the confidence that Apollo knows you and is your companion in this together, and certainly take the user intent that if he's engaging with our conversation, so it can't be a one-way communication all the time. At that point in time, certainly we can recommend our services, allow the user to first engage with the platform, and naturally the business comes thereafter.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Okay, so there are so many interesting things here. We can go on chatting, but I think in the interest of time, I'll want to wrap it up here. Great discussion and great points about the principles that you mentioned, and good to have your take as well, Prateek.
Thank you.
So thank you both of you. This was pretty insightful.